Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. Welcome. We're certainly glad that you are tuning in, and there's folks that are coming into our social media streams as we speak. So we want to welcome you as well. Why don't you get in the stream and let us know who it is that is coming in through those platforms, and the various platforms that we're on, which are there's a variety of them that you can catch us on a regular basis. There's YouTube, that's Kareem Bowen YouTube. There's United Shades of Gray on Facebook. There's Kareem Bowen on Facebook. There's WSGW on Facebook. There is WSGW Radio. What is that icon there for WSGW Radio?
What do you mean?
There's a little icon.
The purple one?
Yeah, I don't. There's not a color.
Oh, it's WSGW.
Okay, is that Twitter?
There's Twitter.
It's a little,
and then Twitch, and then there's also YouTube as well. Okay, so we got them all covered. Happy Hump Day to you as well, Sharice Steele Phillips. We've got an interesting show today. We're going to be talking about coping with racism in a post-civil rights era America, and we'll get into that just a little bit. There's some interesting things that have happened that are really quite interesting, I think. But before we do that, let's talk about what's hot off the press. And so you know what that means, guys. We get to talk about the one person who has had the ability, after losing a presidential election, to be the number one individual that is mentioned every single day in every single news cycle on every single major media and minor outlet. And that's none other than number 45. He takes a bow. So guys, we are now sitting here and we are looking at, I think, indictment number 4. Is this
Sure.
number 4? I'm losing count.
We've got a nice sign on the wall here in the studio that says charge count Trump 91, all other former U.S. presidents 0. I don't know where it came from.
Wait a minute, this is a real thing. This is literally
It's right there.
This is literally a sign in the studio. Charge count Trump 91, all other former U.S. presidents 0. We can't make. Can you get a picture of that?
Yeah.
Can you get that? I mean, that's hilarious.
I don't know where it came from.
We don't know. It's from an anonymous user. The United States of Trump by Bill O'Reilly. This is hilarious. And if you get a chance, I don't know if you can upload that, send it over and upload it. We'll upload it to our page or whatever. That it's interesting. It's funny. But anyways, he's number 1. He has now been charged with, what is this, 41 counts, 41 charges, unlawfully conspired and endeavored to conduct and participate in criminal enterprises.
They're getting him for the RICO Act. He's a gangster.
He is now Al Capone. He is the new Al Capone, Trump Capone. And so this is just all crazy. This time we pulled in some of the other characters, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, which I was kind of interested. Now that is quite interesting that they decided that Mark, I don't know what's happening, but I saw that today that Mark has asked that his case be pulled from the state to a federal court, which I think is kind of interesting. Thank you, Jonathan. This picture is hilarious. That he moves from, I don't know if we can put this in the stream.
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. So Jonathan's going to make it so you can see the picture that's in there. He's asked that his court be moved out of Georgia into a federal court. So the federal judge will make a hearing of this, and they'll determine if the federal courts can listen or say, yeah, you have no reason to do this. Send this back down. And I think that his appeal to make this happen is because he's saying, hey, I was a federal employee at the time, and the normal course of what I do, this is a part of my work. And so therefore this should be allowed to come to federal, since, you know, the rule says that. What do you think, Jonathan? I see you over there going,
Oh no, Art Lewis is calling the studio. So we've got some behind the scenes looks at what's going on right now.
Okay. So
I was just gesturing that's not for me. Something that I thought of yesterday, though, I'll take this time, is with the media coverage, especially. Either A, they are playing right into his hand, and it's like, see, they're out to get me.
Well, that's what he said.
He's baiting them, or he's actually doing wrong things. He knew he was going to be doing wrong things, and before he did the wrong things, he said they're going to come after me.
I believe the latter.
And then it says, "Oh, look, I'm being proven right." But at the same time, do you think all other former U.S. presidents? Do you think none of them ever did anything wrong?
Of course not. We all know Richard Nixon. Yeah, no, of course not.
I cannot tell a lie. Yes,
I'm sure there was others. I'm sure there were many others.
I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that this is politically motivated.
Okay, so you don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind?
Well, I think people have doubts that it's politically motivated. There's no doubt in my mind.
Both could be true.
That's what I was going to say, Mark.
He clearly did very wrong things, as far as I'm concerned. Tried to steal the election, subverted the peaceful transfer of power, and this is politically motivated. They're both true.
But this is what's interesting about the political motivation.
If I could just finish the thought, I mean, I just find it really scary. What he did and what he was trying to do should be really scary to most people about our democracy.
That's what I'm saying. So go ahead, John.
It scares me that what he was saying seemed so plausible. And I still think it is possible that there was some shady stuff that went on with the 2020 election. And I think that it has been covered up. Do I think it would have changed the result of the elections? Probably not. Do I think Biden earned the most votes ever in history? I don't think so.
So let me ask this question. So even in Republican counties where they voted 1, 2, 3 times to make sure and have come back with, there was no corruption, you still think that there was a corruption that most
of the cases have never even seen the light of day.
But why? Some of them have been thrown out, and others have been I don't want to say redacted, but they've been, what do you call it when you take back a case? We've rescinded the case or whatever. So there's a couple of reasons why.
Yeah, only the Democrats cheated on this one.
Yeah, that's it. No. Do I
cheat? But only the Democrats did it. So
do I think that both parties do things that are very, I think, undermined and underhand? Come on,
of course
this is politics. No one's voting for most emotionally or what not most morally sound, and they're going to nominate a politician. About this political motivation, as we were talking about it, is that I think that not only are the Democrats a part of this collusion, I think it's a collusion between the Democrats as well as the Republicans who don't want him to be nominated or to be their nominee to make this happen. The fact or the issue with the matter is we've lost Sound and Jonathan. No, Jonathan's here. We've lost Mark. And
we're having technical difficulties on the stream. Please bear with us.
Yeah, I'm back. So Jonathan disappeared and I lost all audio.
So Mark, what I was saying was that I think that there is, if we can use a word, a collusion that's taking place between the Democrats and Republicans who don't want him to be their nominee. I think that, yes, this is politically motivated and people are using this for their own purposes. The problem with this being politically motivated is that it's politically motivated. And I think that there is a there. I think that he has broken some laws and done some things wrong. And maybe it would not have been a big thing before if it were someone who was only raking in about 6% of the popular vote of their particular party. But unfortunately, he's the lead guy. Now, what I do want to ask is this question. How is this going to impact the debate that's going up? Because we know that number 45, as Jonathan said, he's going to have a huge press conference. is which he's going to prove and show after all of this time.
Like the pillow guy has.
That all of this was a lie. It's all they're just coming for me. And so how does this impact the first debate that's getting ready to take place? Because I think his press conference
circus.
His press conference takes place the day before the debate, I think it is. Yeah. So now, instead of talking about issues and Joe Biden and those Democrats and the economy and all these things, we're going to bring back the conversation to having another debate about election fraud and stealing elections.
Only if the moderator allows that. I mean, there's a moderator. There should be questions. I mean, he'll always talk about what he wants to talk about. But I mean, if I were if I were on the other side, I'd be, saying, do you really want 4 more years of this stuff? And using that to try to use it against them. I mean, ultimately, the people who like him are going to vote for him. What you got to do is rally everybody else. I mean, that's why I think the Republicans need to do what the Democrats did, which is get rid of basically make this about one candidate against Bernie Sanders. They need to find the best Republican candidate to go against Donald Trump.
And it almost worked for the Democrats until Sleepy Joe got to South Carolina and they concocted something new. But he looked like he was going to go down in a blaze of glory. Sharice Steele Phillips, his bad acts are and were so overt. Now, this is the thing that I think this is bad. This is almost like watching your guilty pleasure. The thing that we're talking about, his overt acts, are the things that I kind of like about him. Am I crazy? The things.
Well, I don't know about crazy. I find it a little disturbing.
It is disturbing. Not what he does, but how he does certain things are some of the things that I kind of like.
Here's his message, and here's why you like it.
Okay, tell me.
He says that the establishment is out to get him, which resonates with people in the United States,
especially folks of color, absolutely,
who believe that the system is out to get them. Whether it is or isn't, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
It doesn't mean that they are as well, right?
But it resonates, and every time a charge is brought against him, every time he gets bad news coverage, it reinforces his point that the system's out to get me, it's out to get you. I'll break it down. I'll drain the swamp. You've heard him say that a million times. Yeah. And his own party pushing against him reinforces it further. It's, hey, look, even my own party is against me. The system wants to put you down, and they're trying to do it through me. Let's show them who's boss.
And it's working from a fundraising standpoint. He says all he needs is another good indictment, and he'll have the presidency.
It depends on what you read. I mean, I've been reading articles where his fundraising is down substantially, and they're diverting a lot of the funds to his legal defense and. Who knows?
He's been bankrupt so many times that he knows how to project. I've got a lot of money.
Absolutely.
When he doesn't.
I mean, he did that coming in, so they're finding out he wasn't as wealthy as what we thought. Well, this is my thing. I've always thought Donald Trump was a bit racist. When we look at him, I thought he was he had racist tendencies, I'll say. But he has always been somebody that I thought was always good for entertainment. He's there's the image for those of you who are watching in our social media stream. This is the image that when we came in the studio, charge count 91, Trump 91, all other former U.S. presidents 0. Right next to it, Bill O'Reilly's. Put that back up really quick. Bill O'Reilly's book, The United States of Trump: How the President Really Sees America, by Bill O'Reilly. So just an interesting caption that we have in the studio. There's 2 shows in here. There's the one that you hear, and then there's the one that you see when you come into the studio. But anyways, we gotta get.
By the way, have you seen all the hilarious memes based off of the Alabama brawl?
Oh my gosh!
Aquaman is famous.
Aquaman is my favorite.
And
he is my
favorite. Is too. I mean, there's all sorts of little Instagram loops of
Aquaman. Mark, it's funny because Aquaman was not only fighting racial injustice, but he was also fighting stereotypes against Black people as he leapt into the water and swam to the battle.
I'm not sure I call that swimming now that I've seen the video. That was more like a dog paddle. But
hey, he made it from A to B. That's something that most people recognize. But what are you going to say, Jonathan?
One of the guys involved in breaking it up was from Buena Vista, right down the road.
So we got to get him in here to find out what was going on. I'm still trying to figure out. Nobody notified me of the international symbol to come to a black man's aid by throwing the hat in the air. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But this
is that why you're always wearing a hat?
Just in case you gotta have the lid. Hey, I came prepared. There may be a need, for rescue and support. So I brought the lid at all times. But I want to get to some things, Mark, because we're gonna get through this politics thing. The fact of the matter is nobody wants Donald Trump. And to be quite honest, most people don't want Joe Biden either.
Nope.
So we'll leave them to hash that out. But what I do want to get to, and this is really important, so I want to talk some time. We know that Hawaii is experiencing, as Greece was, as Canada was, as the U.S. on the West Coast has, these wildfires. And Mark, with you being Mark is not in the studio with me. As you notice, he's got a very relaxed and casual background. Is that a soft gray suede back wall, Mark? What's going on here?
I'm in a hotel room.
but Mark does have the luxury of sharing. He has lived in Hawaii.
I have on Oahu, which is a different island.
It's a different island.
It's the island with the greatest population density. It's where Waikiki is.
Right.
Honolulu, all the military bases, or most of the military bases, are on Oahu.
So, Mark, as you're looking at what we're seeing, and help us to understand, what does this mean for Hawaii? And have you spoken with anyone concerning what's happening?
No, I haven't. I mean, the only people I still know on the island are some high school classmates that I'm friends with, but not super tight with. It's been so many years since I've lived there, so I haven't traded messages with them or anything. I didn't know anyone that was living on Maui, which is the island that was impacted.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is the first time I've ever heard of a runaway fire in Hawaii. Now, on one hand, the islands what's interesting about all of those islands is in very short distances, you go from rainforest to what are, in essence, dry lands, very dry. And so in a sense, it doesn't surprise me that, and where that fire was on the dry, I believe the dry side of the island, that you would have kind of a runaway fire. As I've thought about it, I don't know why there's not more, although there's not a lot of natural causes for fires in Hawaii. There's not a lot of lightning strikes, etc. in Hawaii. People aren't out camping on most of those islands, where you could end up with a campfire that loses control. That's probably why they haven't had them before. Obviously, devastating. So
I guess the issue and a part of the problem was I didn't know that Hawaii was there were hurricane force winds and things that were going on. And so when the fire broke out, these winds kind of helped, push it, kind of like Santa Ana. Yeah.
That's what happened in Colorado last winter. I mean, 100-mile-an-hour winds, and there's just nothing you can do. You just have to, it just burns.
Yeah. So that is just, it's absolutely crazy to, I have friends that are actually, they were on Maui during the course of this time. I'm praying, they are safe. They have posted that they were safe. And they showed themselves in the shelter, and they were showing themselves that the only way that they could get from where they were at their resort to safety was to go through what they say is the most dangerous road on the island. And there was fire flames literally on both sides as they were driving through. It is so Charlie Haddad, he's the one, the guy who was posting, my buddy who was posting that. We're so thankful that you guys are safe. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get home, because everything is kind of in essence up in the air, and they got lots of people that they're evacuating. But to see people jumping, running, driving as far as they can in their car, and then jumping out of the car into the ocean, car catching on fire, and then they still have these waves and things that are left behind from these hurricane winds.
Right.
Not the safest place, especially when you're talking about being in there for 9 hours. It was a scary thing.
Yeah, it was interesting because I just read an article about because of this, like just jumping in the water or running to water isn't really necessarily the safest thing to do. Obviously, that's all they could do. They had no other place to go. But a lot of
it's
it's really
thinking
the smoke.
fire, water.
But it's the smoke inhalation basically.
Yeah.
And if you've seen some of those videos of people in the ocean, I mean, it's pretty dense smoke that they're kind of waiting in, basically.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, you know what? It's interesting because I think it was probably in 2000 and my mom is in the social media stream. She'll be able to help me. I think this was probably in like 2008. One of my aunts was having a birthday party and they did a whole shebang with all of her sisters, my grandmother, and all of those individuals. That's why I think it was 2008, because my grandmother passed, I think, the following year. But they were in on Maui. They went to the Grand Wailea Resort and Spa, which is like a Waldorf Astoria property.
Mhm.
And this entire property, 40 acres, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, just beautiful, beautiful resort. Most of it has been destroyed. And so it was correct. It was '08. Thank you so very much. And so she said that a large portion of what was there is now destroyed. And so you think about, when here in the US, Hawaii is one of those destinations that married couples and families. So it's kind of like, I want to do that once in my life kind of thing, to have something that is such a beautiful place. And I mean, there's other places that are beautiful in Hawaii, but I would say that is kind of a really, really big tourist destination in terms of their spas and resorts and things of that nature. Mark, how does this play into the economy of Hawaii?
Well, I mean, tourism by far is the largest source of income for the state. Again, most of Maui is a pretty big tourist destination. The biggest, though, is probably Oahu still. But there's really 4 islands that people go to: Oahu, which is where probably 80 to 90% of the population actually lives; Maui, Kauai, which are similar and kind of very small, almost exclusively tourism; and then the Big Island, which is by far the biggest. It's also got the name of Hawaii, so it's the island of Hawaii. But
when people think Hawaii, which island are they most likely talking about, Mark?
Typically, it's Oahu is what they're familiar with.
That's where Waikiki is, you said?
Waikiki is, Pearl Harbor, Honolulu. That's Oahu.
Okay.
Yeah. There is an island called Hawaii, which is, in Hawaii, they call it the Big Island, because by far, geographically, it's by far the biggest island.
What's there?
It's huge. It's got mountains. It's got the largest privately held cattle farm in the United States is on that island.
Really?
Ranch. They've got all sorts of. It's a really amazing island because, again,
isn't it what you think of when you think Hawaii? You think cattle ranches?
Yeah, it's the biggest privately held cattle ranch in the U.S. So.
Exporting, like, if you're running a cattle ranch on Hawaii, how are you exporting your product?
I said, is that what you think about cattle ranching? Mark, hold on. I said, isn't that what you think of when you think of Hawaii cattle ranching? He has this crazy look on his face. He says,
how does it work?
Be difficult.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
How does it work? How do you make money doing that?
Yeah.
But they must be making money doing that.
But that's really one of the craziest things. Now, are large parts of the one, because you look at Fiji, look at Hawaii, are large parts of these islands, are they all of it owned by the United States, or is some of this owned by the Japanese?
No, well, there's private property, so I'm sure Japanese companies or entities or people own land, but it's, just like any foreign individual can buy land anywhere in the United States for the most part.
And you can say that. It won't happen in any other place in the world, but in the United States, everything is for sale. So bring your dollars, bring your yens, bring your francs, bring your euros. We're open and we're doing business in the U.S. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our show topic, which is coping with racism in the post-civil rights era. Stick, stay, don't go away. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Grey on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and we're back with more United Shades of Grey, Conversations of Race in America. We failed to give a shout out to the wonderful people at WJOL 1340 AM in Joliet, Illinois. And notice we pronounced that right, because as we told you guys about a year ago, that it is actually a misdemeanor crime to mispronounce the name of the city. Wow, I wish other cities could have so much pride that they would charge you and ticket you for mispronouncing their name. Could you imagine how many tickets we would be passing out for people who say Saginaw?
Or Buena Vista, Buena Vista?
Buena Vista, Buena Vista. What is it? What is it actually on the charter? Is it Buena Vista?
I have no idea.
I think it's Buena Vista, but people say Buena Vista all the time. And it makes me mad. Buena. When has Buena been anything other than Buena? But I'm getting off of that soapbox, and we're going to get to the conversation that's at hand today. I sent you guys a video, and I think that most people, it's interesting how this is really, to me, I think it's going under the radar, this whole entire conversation of what we're getting ready to have with these police officers. Have you heard a lot about it?
No, I haven't. And you know why? It's because of Trump.
Well, and Maui. I mean, I think on one hand, Kareem, these incidents happen, and at some point, okay, they happen, and they keep happening, and there's other things in the news, I guess. It's
But as a black man,
I understand. I totally understand.
This is what I was saying about the issues that are pressing to America. So many times I feel that the issues that are pressing to America are not the issues that are pressing to some of the people groups that exist here. And so when Sleepy Joe became president and people were voting like, oh, we got to get him in. Oh, we got to get Kamala. Oh, first black MVP or VP. And I was like, Auntie Kamala, I'm not voting for that. I can't. I'm not feeling it. But anyways, I said that if they don't deal with the issues on voting rights legislation out the gate, that there will be a more pressing issue that would arise that would take precedence, and voting rights for black folks would still be something that you gotta come back so many years and ratify and vote to keep us as a voting population. And that's exactly what happened. We saw that this war in Ukraine came in and sucked all the life out of any voting rights legislation in terms of making sure that votes were protected. We've seen hundreds of lawsuits and changing of policy as it relates to taking those things away. But anyways, I digress as it relates to that. Now, this is not even a part of what we were supposed to be talking about today, but I think that there's a growing sentiment, and you guys let me know if you feel differently. We're tired of sending money to Ukraine. I think that I was looking, the last numbers that the president of Ukraine said almost make me clutch my pearls when he was talking about the number of billions of dollars that have been sent, because I remember like 1.3 billion, then $900,000, and we're going to send an extra $1 billion in actual machinery. And he gave a staggering number, and I was like, we gave that much money to Ukraine? What are you guys thinking about continually sending money to fight this war in Ukraine?
It's like all of these wars since the Vietnam War, they just keep dragging on, and it's hard to pull out. Once you start, it's really hard to pull out.
Well, not really. We saw that in Afghanistan. Just send your troops home, and whatever happens there.
Ultimately, there's
repercussions. And it wasn't the best strategy, but we've done it.
Well, that's the issue. Yeah, I mean, those are the tough decisions a leader has to make. And no matter what decision you make, there's negative repercussions.
Well, I would like to see our elderly get better care. I would like to see if we're going to spend some money, let's spend it on things like I don't know, education.
So that I don't disagree with
so that we can compete with companies like Japan and China when it comes to having elite scholars.
We're too busy
paying
infrastructure, maybe
Kareem,
potholes and bridges. Don't get me on my soapbox, Mark.
Time out. We spend a lot of money on education. Most of the IP in this world, this country generates way more IP than any other country in the world. And so I hear the frustration and concern about the education system.
About a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I would
really like. But there's never
I would like to be more creative about let's make Canada do something different with their garbage. I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about racism. Because I'm going to get mad when I see, because there's so many things that we say we cannot afford, and we're spending money all over the world other than
I just don't know if continuing to throw money at those issues the way we have and just throwing more money at it is really going to solve the problem.
Mark, this is what I'm going to say. If we're going to throw money somewhere, let's throw it somewhere in the United States, period.
But are you going to continue to spend it the same
way? I don't care what benefit is it to me sending it to another country and throwing it over there. Unfortunately, this is a never-ending war.
100% agree.
I mean, so come on. So if I'm going to throw money somewhere, let me throw it in my backyard.
I think we're discussing two different issues in a certain sense. We spend a lot of money. Okay, you want to move on? That's fine.
We're moving on. All right. The black man is tired of talking about this, and so he is going to move.
You're the boss. Yes, sir.
I'm drunk with power in this moment. I am the boss. I'm the black man. Come on. No, I wanted to have this conversation. I sent you guys, and I love you guys. I sent you guys a video that was talking about what's taking place down in, well, of all places, Mississippi, which did not surprise me.
Wow, what a stunner.
Absolutely. This took place in what county was this? Do you guys remember what county I put in here? I never heard of this county, but what I will tell you is that my dad was born and raised Rankin County. So this is just outside of Jackson. My dad is from outside of Philadelphia, Mississippi. Not super far from these areas. So racism is going to be a better conversation. Absolutely, Sharice Steele Phillips. We're going to talk about it we're talking about this in a different way, maybe. Okay, Alma Collier, welcome to the conversation. So in this video, we have 6 white officers which have coined or named themselves the Goon Squad, which I think is an appropriate title.
Yeah, tells you a lot about their mentality.
They recently pled guilty in Mississippi to raiding a home and torturing 2 black men. Now, this is what's interesting about this, and this is where I think that the conversation, the meat of the conversation, I want to have. Some of the men that were here are facing life in prison on January 24th. This is the story. January 24th in Braxton, Mississippi. Not Tony Braxton, but Braxton, Mississippi. A neighbor called. Here it is. A neighbor of one of the officers called and said, there are black people next door. And that they were staying there. And so the response of the officer was, are y'all ready for a mission? So the Goon Squad gets into full effect. They burst into the home. They handcuffed the 2 men. They beat them. They tasered them. The names of the men were Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. They were seen in the video that I shot you guys. I probably should put this in our social stream so people can go back and watch it. But they sexually abused them with sex toys. That was the weirdest thing that I had known. However, there is a precedence for that.
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, that's
Pulp Fiction. But there's even a greater, when you go back to the days of slavery, sexual exploitation. And I'm not trying to say nothing here, but I'm gonna just tell you what it is. Sexual exploitation of black men by white masters and slave owners is a thing. And I don't know if it's due to I don't know what it's. I have my theories, but I can't prove or disprove anything. But this is actually a thing. So these guys sexually assaulted these 2 black men when they were tied up, and they were waterboarding them with oil and milk and water as they were tied to this chair. They were shoving dildos in their mouths. This is ridiculous. I've never heard of this kind of thing in my life, but this is what was going on. They burst into the home. This takes place. And then, they put a gun in, I think it was Michael Jenkins' mouth. Was there for about a minute. He pulls the trigger, lacerates his tongue, fractures some bones in his neck or jaw or whatever, and leaves the guy laying in a pool of blood, of his own blood, as they went to the porch to talk about what they were going to do. Now, this seems like a scene out of Rosewood, one of these crazy movies that we often have. So there was no issue. They were not going to do anything. These people have done things before where men have ended up dead, and it's just a cover up. But this is the conversation that I want to have is that oftentimes when we see black men in the community, black folks in the community talking about how racist areas were, we have a kickback from other parts of the community saying, that was back in the day. No one's doing that. I think generally speaking, there may be a few bad actors, but we're no longer in that time. And I've had my own experience within the past 2 weeks of a situation with police officers, which I had not said anything back, but when I saw this, I thought about it. So when you guys are seeing this, and when you guys are reading these things, what are the thoughts that kind of like that come to mind when you this is something that black men have been saying have happened. Black America's been saying this has happened. We saw with George Floyd, and then we made it, that was one isolated incident, but I think that was the cameras and the pandemic made us all closed captive watchers of this thing. But this is something that is happening in communities in Black America that we don't have opportunities to see. This case would have never been seen if they had not continually pushed and pushed and pushed and gotten individuals like the civil rights attorneys, the Black Lawyers for Justice, and some other individuals that were there. I think one of the white prosecuting attorneys that wouldn't let it die. It would have just been something else. What are your thoughts when you see these types of things taking shape and being reported? Are these isolated incidents, or do you think that maybe there's an issue that America is having that we're not taking a greater look at?
Well, I think in a certain sense, like what I said before, it's kind of some of all of those things. I think it's an exception versus the rule, but it obviously continues to happen regularly. And again, I know people aren't going to like what I'm about to say here, but it's a natural, a natural progression, which doesn't happen overnight, of where racism is still out there. It's heavier in some areas versus others. And it takes time. It takes generations, I think, to get rid of it. I think we've had this discussion before. If you interact with kids that are, college age kids now or less than 30, you see race as much less of an issue as people of my generation. And it's sad, but I tend to be a realist when it comes to these things. Is it takes time to kind of weed itself out. And the reality is people are still people. And some vestiges of racism will always exist. They always have existed, and they will continue to exist to some degree, probably forever, because people are afraid of differences.
I'm sorry, Mark, and I agree with you. I just look at this comment by Alma Colliard. I was kind of thrown off by when I read it. My husband's great-grandmother was married to a Black man, but all her kids are by the white master. That's profound. But we know that happens. But Mark, okay, so my question then, Jonathan, so should the message to Black America be like, just be patient, it's going to change over the next few decades? Or
I got a few thoughts about this, because one, to take this incident and say, see, this is what's happening, ignores the fact that Black people are doing this to Black people are doing this to white people. It's acting like it's white human nature. It is not human nature.
Okay, but this is the thing. We can't, hold on, because what we can't do is convolute the arguments. And that's what always happens, is that when we talk about these issues of race happening, white America always want to say, well, what about Black on Black crime? And I told you that's a fallacy, because you kill whom you are around, you murder, you break into, you steal from.
I think the point is it's human. Jonathan's trying to make there's an element of human nature here, irrespective of race.
This type of evil is human nature. Now, what I'm saying, we
don't see historically in history. I want to see historically in history where human nature depicts other races of people who impoverish, who enslave, who murder, who kill, who do these types of things outside of some places in China, that the prevalence of this taking place. And I'm not trying to say that white people are just
read the Bible.
Devils.
It is happening in Europe right now with immigrants from the Middle East coming and
in Asia, in Asian companies and countries like go ahead.
European countries, these are people of a certain demographic coming to these European countries and performing horrible, heinous acts.
On the Europeans. Okay. We're going to see those in the news, and but we're talking about this one. I don't want to get diverted from this particular conversation.
But this is, you can't use an anecdotal thing and
now you're undercutting what I was saying.
Okay, go ahead. Make your statement.
I will specify in on this one the motivation of race being a motivator. That is a problem, and it is a recurring problem.
Okay,
I'll acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
I'll also acknowledge that these are former officers. These were people that were given authority and trusted with a badge. They shouldn't have been. That this kind of thing, and maybe it's a power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't know, but these are people that were that is also a problem that should be addressed.
Okay.
That's what I'll say about the specific thing, but taking this and extrapolating it to this is what happens is
well this is not an isolated. First of all, I would take that if this were an isolated incident. It's not an isolated incident because
if you take it in the context of others, okay.
If we were if we were to take a look at the long list of individuals, for instance, George Foreman to white America was an isolated incident, but there's a Tamir Rice, there is a Breonna Taylor, there is an Ahmaud. I mean, the list goes on and on with other incidents, and every incident, every single time this arises, cannot be an isolated incident. And no longer can we continually say that this is just bad training, when in fact, when we look at this, Sheriff Brian Bailey, who's the sheriff in the area, is aware of what was going on and was present when this took place and happened to another individual where they covered up the situation, Damian Cameron, who died in the custody. His parents thought that he was going to court, going to jail, found out that he was dead on the side. He died just like George Floyd. And this is why we use the term systemic, because when we look at this, Damian Cameron died in the custody of these police officers. One of them had their knee on his neck, much like George Floyd. He also had from his eyes, he was bleeding from his eyes, hemorrhaging from his eyes. And then the information that was necessary to make an autopsy complete was then hidden, and a lot of that covered up, which is now becoming to be opened again. And so there's a cover up. So my thought is, I think that a lot of what we have seen as being things that have not been existed in America are things that have been covered up and not truly exploited. And we are now at a place that Black and white Americans alike are over this whole thing. Like, if this is existing, I think that and this speaks to what you're saying, Mark, we're living in a different time. What we saw on the Alabama paddle boat thing was the fact that we're living in a different time. Folks are not going to stand by and be treated as insignificant and allow certain things to happen without taking a stand and taking a voice. And that's Black and white together. And I think that the only way we can get through this is not to wait for our time and wait for things to happen, but we've got to sound the alarm. We've got to begin to build coalitions across racial lines with those individuals, because everybody don't feel this way, but these systems are still in place and they are very relevant, and they're not isolated.
Well, I guess the question I would ask is it the system or is it the people who are in charge of this? I mean, I don't know that it's a system issue versus you've got people who are in that system that are abusing their power or are morally bankrupt or whatever.
Well, it's a systemic problem, and it's a problem with the systems, because if you are the county sheriff, that makes you the law authority in that county.
Right, and but that's not the system. That's the person.
But what I'm saying, he's the county sheriff, and the deputies that report to him are under his leadership.
Sure.
Now, if that can happen, and then the deputies are corrupt and they're covering this up, and then we take it to an autopsy, which is a completely different branch of government and a completely different entity within itself, and details are not being shared, and the outcome of the autopsy is inconclusive, then we have to understand that this is not a problem with an individual. This is a problem with systems that exist. And I gave you guys a rundown, and I'm going to run through this really quick, and then I'll let you guys kind of have some thoughts on this. 1964, and this was something that I just kind of chronicled and I put together from some things that I was reading and seeing. In 1964, which is modern history, this is post-slavery. Yep, got it. Civil Rights Act was passed and made it legal to discriminate against Black people. That's 1964. Mark, I think you were probably alive around that time.
I was 3.
Okay, so you were around. 1968, MLK was killed because of his fight for equality When he died, there was a poll that was taken, and a third of America said that he brought his death upon himself for agitating the system. 1971, this is 2 years before I was born. I'll be 50, by the way, on next Tuesday. Nixon declared a war on drugs. This is 1971, targeted basically hippies and blacks for use of marijuana and opioids and things of that nature. Opioids, most folks aren't going to prison for in the way that they did for other drugs, which we'll see in a minute. And marijuana is now legal, right? In 1987, Jonathan, we're heading towards your life. I'm a young kid, teenager almost by right now, probably 14, 15, 16 years old. CIA flooded black communities with crack cocaine to pay for a war in Nicaragua. This is not something that I'm making up. This is an actual thing that took place in American history. Chronicled in this popular show, there's a show that I love called Snowfall. It talks about how the U.S. government funded crack cocaine and cocaine coming into the communities to help pay for a war in Nicaragua. Another movie that was created, Kill a Messenger. The guy that played Hawkeye from the Avengers, I can't think of his name. CI Contra, he played the CI Contra agent Webb, who committed suicide by shooting himself in the back of his head. It's not suicide, right? But that's what they said. In the 80s and 90s, crack flooded in those communities. And this is stuff that was put in the community by the government. In 1984, we all know Bill Clinton's crime bill. It didn't stop the flood of crimes in the community, but it started something called mass incarceration. They started locking people up, those two-bit drug dealers on the corner, people of that nature. It was the largest incarceration, incarcerated more black people than any other event in history. Then we have it where businesses could still do business. Businesses could still then do business with the prison systems, getting on different types of work and getting them working, and they didn't have to pay them. This was a part of the system. It's called slavery, but it was legal because the 13th Amendment did not apply to anything outside of just working freely as slaves, but it didn't include prison. Prison was the only thing that was admitted. But we've seen this over and over again. Now we have mass incarcerations. We have felonies. We have all these things that are not allowing felons to vote. 4.6 black Americans.
Do you think felons should be allowed to vote?
Well, I think that once you pay your do your debt to society, that you should be reinstated with your rights. I don't think you should be paying for something forever.
Okay.
Just like white America doesn't think that they should pay for slavery forever, neither should a prisoner pay for the crime.
I was just asking you about the
I don't think those two things are comparable.
No, but I think that they are in terms of paying your debt or retribution to society. They may not be equally in terms of the heinous crime of nature, but they are in terms of concept of reality. Cherie Steele Phillips, it's sad that the prevalence of this happening in 2023 is clear indication of the ignorance and racism that exists in our governmental systems that directly impacts our world. Now, my conversation about this whole thing was not necessarily about all of these things, but it was really to drive a camera, a lens, a thought process that if these things are continually happening, yes, we're getting better, but there are systems that are preventing these things from changing. And I think that as we look at this, and I think we should have more conversations because I really want to hear the other side of this. I wanted to put the information out there. I think Yvonne Daniels, yes, it's the system. There are some things that we have to begin to do that are hard conversations, hard looks that we have to have at ourselves, black, white, Asians, Puerto Ricans, because if change is going to happen, change is only going to take place when each of us realizes that these atrocities exist, that these things are not just one-offs, but there is a continual, habitual system that is allowing these things to continually take place. We've got to make a change. The change starts with us. I'm going to have to leave you guys there. We're going to come back with more conversations on race in America. God bless you all. Grace and peace.